and welcome to J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're in Santa Barbara on location at the tail end of the Water Symposium. It's been a very interesting time, and many interesting people from all over the world have gathered to participate in one way or another in this conference. At this conference, I had the unique pleasure of meeting Carol Rosin, who is our guest today, who has been the founder of the Institute for Cooperation in Space. She has been a real leader in the aerospace industry, having been the first woman to have a corporate management job in the aerospace industry. This is really a real title of distinction, and she's been able to make a tremendous difference in that field, and this is continuing, and the implications of what she is doing are really fabulous for us all, which is why we wanted to have Carol on the show today. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Mitchell. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, first of all, what drew you into this field of all fields in the first place?
Well, I'm an educator, and I don't particularly like to fly in planes, so to be talking about outer space is really an unusual thing for me to be doing. I'd rather be playing with children, and I'm a child psychologist. But I think any issue that any of us care about today leads us to the war machine. Why are our issues not being focused on with a true intention to get to the truth and make corrections in those fields?
That's very true. I mean, the war machine eats up such a significant part of our daily and annual budget.
That's so true.
Anybody has to take a look because kids don't have books in school.
Exactly.
In urban centers and elsewhere. So.
And I taught in one of those very low socioeconomic areas, just outside of Washington, coincidentally.
Oh, yes, that's ironic.
Yes.
Right, so you're right. So in other words, considering the investment dollars that go into the war machine and our tax dollars.
And what I found was, I sat down with my students one day in the 6th grade classroom, and I said, look, here is the menu of what I have to teach. How do you want to learn this? Because pulling pen knives on each other is just not going to cut it with me. So they said to me, that's what was going on. And they said, we want to get off this planet. We can't stand it here. And I said, okay, let's do it. One of the units I have to teach is about outer space in the 6th grade. So we set up our classroom, our chairs, like we were in a space habitat. We took off and landed in outer space. Everyone went off. Some worked in a space hospital, hotel, a space school, a laboratory, an industry, and some just traveled around the universe. And when you walked in our classroom, you were decontaminated at the door with a hairdryer. Now, what that led me to was Werner von Braun, the father of rocketry, who had escaped from Peenemünde, come here with a lot of German scientists. He was now at Fairchild Industries.
Wasn't he one of Hitler's...
Yes, he worked under Hitler, so he really learned the game of how technology can be so destructive. And at the same time as my classroom was pretending to be living and working in outer space, the students were communicating with world leaders about what they saw on the planet and wanted for their future from above. It hit the press, students studying on Spaceship Earth. Teachers around the country thought there was a class in space, of course. It just failed to say that it was a classroom, and started looking for this classroom to become pen pals or launch their classrooms. It was kind of a fluke.
Oh, that's so clever.
Werner von Braun saw this article and said, bring this woman up here. These are the days of EEOC. We have to get all women into positions now.
EEOC?
This is equal opportunity.
Okay.
So it was now time for women to be employed in these different positions. And I was invited in.
You were being outfitted to be an astronaut.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the reason that I then was offered the job at Fairchild Industries was I was brought into his office. I was invited to come and see this aerospace company. I didn't know that they were looking to push a woman up the corporate ranks of industry, because they had no one with a space aptitude, they thought. Of course, there were a million women working in the industry.
Right. You're a 6th grade teacher.
That's right. So I had an aptitude to become a corporate manager of an aerospace company. Now, I was brought into Werner von Braun's office as a gift, but I, of course, thought he was a Nazi, and I'm obviously not the type that's at a loss for words very often, but I sat down in front of him, this gift to me, to meet Werner von Braun, and I
Of course,
couldn't talk.
He called you.
Well, he called me
basically.
into the office.
Okay.
They said there was a woman in the industry walking around taking a tour as a gift for this Spaceship Earth teaching unit that
Yeah,
she wrote,
exactly.
a teacher, and he said, bring her in. I had a 10-minute meeting scheduled, but it lasted for about 3 hours. And during that time, he said to me, Carol, what you're talking about is real. They are getting ready to put weapons in space. This is not just about violence in the classroom. This is not, you're trying to heal a violent situation by giving your children something creative, new, wonderful to do.
Yes.
And that's why I'm interested in you. We need to give these aerospace industries, the military, industrial, lab, university, government, intelligence, inexorably linked, complex, something else to do. Besides war, because I, Wernher von Braun, lived under Hitler, I saw what was going on. And we came here to try to collect new ideas and to change the war machine into a space machine. A war industry is huge, it's gigantic. You can't shut down the military, you can't shut down corporations. It's just not going to happen. I think the many progressive protesters are starting to see that, even though we should still be in the streets. It's not going to cause second order change. That's first order change, where you educate, where you throw blankets on the freezing people. I'm now talking for von Braun, in fact, about changing the whole game. Real change is second order change. That's when the whole consciousness changes. And what von Braun explained to me was that in space, there are, as of today, about 50 years worth of cooperative ventures going on. The military's been in space, corporations, at today, 2003. There's been nothing but international cooperation in space. The new element in the game would be weapons, bringing the violent culture into space. That's what I'm working to stop.
I see.
With many people all over the world who don't want to see the escalation of that mindset into space. Because if they get away with putting weapons in space, nothing is going to change here except possibly, in my negative viewpoint, the obliteration of the human species. I mean, we're very close to polluting, as we learned in this water conference, the planet, our bodies, let alone our minds. And if they put technology into space that could even control our minds, collective and individual, our bodies, what is going to happen to the consciousness on the Earth?
Is that what's being contemplated?
That's definitely being contemplated. It's not being disclosed to the public. It's horrifying.
Is it beyond contemplation?
Oh no, it's on the drawing boards. In fact, there's a
That's what I
lot
mean.
of
That's what I
experiment.
mean.
Oh yeah,
It's closer to implementation.
absolutely. They've been experimenting with this sort of technology on the Earth as it is. I think many people have heard of HARP and many of these
Yes,
other
definitely.
experiments, and there are a lot of people that feel as though they are victims. Perhaps they are.
Yes.
Now, what we're talking about is not focus any longer, however, on uncovering cover-ups, which is first-order change, doesn't change anything. Not focusing on protesting anti-military, anti-war, anti-corporate spending, anti-everything. Anti is anti. You get more anti, and it's unfortunate. We've tried that approach.
The law of physics.
Exactly. So now we're focusing with intention, with that healing energy that we all know about. We're focusing with that kind of powerful intention on a new visual, where George Bush is envisioning, like through decades has been envisioned, seizing the high ground. You know, wars are about seizing the high ground. You know, the pyramids. Now we're going to go up into castles. We're going to get the mountaintops. Now you and I are alive at the moment
outer space.
when it's outer space.
Yeah.
So we now have an idea that instead of accelerating that program, continuing to accelerate it to weaponize space, we're calling for a bill and treaty to be signed into law. And there's a congressman who's actually running for president. Dennis Kucinich has introduced a bill. He's reintroducing it each session of the Congress, called the Space Preservation Act. Totally the progressive candidate.
Yes.
And he does have all the issues correct.
Yes.
In this one, he's the only candidate that I know of so far, who's calling for a ban on all space-based weapons, and the vision, to transform the whole war machine, which is huge, into the only other thing that's big enough to replace it, the space industry. But the game is being played to seize the high ground right now. The accelerated motion is to weaponize space. Notice that many countries of the world are being sucked in right now to working on what they're calling missile defense, the ground-based part of the space-based. But they want to make it impossible to stop. There's momentum building of funding, vested interest, and technology being rapidly put into place that would make it impossible to stop this weaponization of space. I believe they're trying to do this before the next presidential election in 2004, so we have to get our act together.
All of this is happening on the ground with Bechtel and Halliburton
That's
in
right.
Iraq. Essentially, not only are billions being spent out of our pocket in effect, but also it's in a major distraction technique while they're doing this.
Exactly. And in fact, it's such a huge distraction that the formula, having been a corporate manager now of an aerospace company, sixth grade school teacher, corporate manager of an aerospace industry, a space and missile defense consultant, an honorary Marine, thank you, I have learned that the real war games are being planned with this formula. Wars are not about Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, Noriega, any of these people. Wars are specifically to dump the old Osama bin Laden. Notice,
a family friend.
Where are they now? This game is about seizing the high ground, and the formula is dump the old weapons somewhere, test the new weapons anywhere, and then rationalize the budgets for the next phase of the war machine. And so you have to keep identifying enemies. Notice that even while the Iraq war was going on, we had another choice of moving. Was it going to be North Korea, Syria? You know, we're even back to Russia, China maybe, Iran. I mean, who is this next?
It was all being cast out.
Doesn't even matter who it is either. So that's the formula. Dump the old weapons, test the new ones, rationalize the budgets for the new ones. Now, what we're doing is we've decided to focus on the vision, because now that we know that formula, we're saying, okay, we can't stop it. That machine is so huge, I don't care how many millions of people are in the streets. When they stop the war, it's because they've already dumped their old weapons and tested the new ones. Vietnam, anywhere. That's why they stop it. I learned from being inside the belly of the beast. What I also learned is that most of the people in the military-industrial complex do not want to go to war. Yes, there is a handful of killers who love blood and guts and rape and press that button in those war machines and then give it to the kids so that they start now on computer games and, you know, to learn how
a real sick element.
Yes.
A pathological element.
Totally pathological. But what we learned was, and now I'm an educator and a child psychologist, give the little boys something else to do. And girls, give them something else to do. Exactly. Instead of space battle stations, space bombers, spacecraft with bombers on them, instead of on celestial bodies or on technology in space, space stations.
Maybe wings of angels, who knows?
Hey!
That could be fun too.
Instead of those things, instead of battle stations, we build, and this is on the drawing boards, space hospitals, you know, go into space. Don't forget, astronauts grow a half an inch to an inch when they're in space, lack of gravity. You know,
so
lack of air pressure. Yes, I mean, really, you've got a sore arm and a leg today. Yes, absolutely. We'll just put you on this. We'll send you up in a space elevator, not painless. We'll just send you up. You'll go up into one of these crafts in zero gravity. You'll be treated, you see. You'll come back down and you'll just feel so good and relaxed. But just, that's space hospitals. You can do.
That's an anti-aging technique also.
Yes, well, you can imagine the potential.
The possibilities
and
are endless.
Put those possibilities in front of the children that are so depressed right now. They're on drugs. They're trying to escape. Who can blame them?
Ritalin, they can't believe what
No, and the parents are putting them on drugs because they can't control these poor, bored, scared children.
Let me just go back to something so I understand some of the progression. You had that 10-minute meeting that became 3 hours. Were you then hired at Fairchild?
Yes.
Then, and how long did you work there?
I worked there about 3.5, almost 4 years, 1974 to 77, when Werner von Braun died.
Okay.
When
so you
he
were
died,
under his tutelage in a way?
Oh yes, completely. And it was very secret. I was running community relations programs. Oh yes, it was really.
And he was a peaceful-minded man?
Totally. He has gotten a bad rap, like so many people that there are certain people who try to discredit people from the far, far right to the far, far left who often don't quite understand, even though it's understandable from their perspectives, those perspectives, the far, far right might not want anybody to hear about the peaceful uses of space because their game is to weaponize space and dominate and control space, because he who dominates and controls the space dominates and controls the earth. The U.S. Air Force 2020 vision, can you imagine? It's the Vision for 2020 document that says they want to dominate and control space. To the far, far left, who want nothing in space, and that's understandable too.
We thought the Russians wanted to dominate Earth.
Oh, well, and I was one of the first women, if not the first, off a plane in Russia saying, what do you want to be a communist for, and come over here and kill us with anti-killer satellites and take our... And then I found out they'd never had an operational anti-killer satellite. This was on the cover of magazines, but they didn't have one. This is
propaganda.
Propaganda lie-based. And they gave me a list when I came back on one of those 40 visits I made to Russia. They gave me a list of the cooperative ventures, including what turned out to be the Apollo-Soyuz link-up.
In space.
In space. And when we sat down in Russia...
to the American people.
You got it. We could hardly get any press about it. But now we will, because it is the moment in time. And I believe, I hope that there are enough Americans who will wake up to space hospitals, space schools, hotels and resorts, farms, industries, labs. Listen.
I hope it's not a repeat of what we've got here.
No, but you really touched on a key. This is about a contract marketplace, and this is about a security system. That's how it's billed to us, right? More jobs. Well, listen, if you're going to have space hospitals, schools, labs, hotels, farms, industries, elevators, craft, have a great time exploring the universe to find out who we really are and who the OPCs, I call them, off-planet cultures are, then we need to have everybody focused on that exciting vision. Why? Because instead of building a marketplace that's a war economy based under the guise of calling it peace, we really are going to enter now into a peacetime economy. That's going to give us a whole new economic stimulus package that isn't a war-based one. For space travel, for living and working in space.
Travel will know.
Yes,
no
but
bounds.
the jobs will be right here on Earth. The profits, the stockholders' reports, everybody's going to be excited. Yes, of course.
Email.
We should email this vision around instead of the visions of what's going on in Iraq and the lies we're being told. We need to start talking about what we can do as solutions. And also, not just the economic stimulus package, but this new ban on space-based weapons, this bill and a world treaty that Congressman Kucinich and others have also called for, getting signed by all the world leaders, will really allow us to build what's already been started, a global cooperative information sharing system. That's already in place. There are thousands of satellites up there. We're not going to take them down.
No.
So are we going to classify all this information about where the sick waters are that we can see from space so that the ships can go in with more weapons? Forget that idea.
Sure.
And use these satellites as force multipliers to aim more weapons? No way. What we're going to do is use those satellites now to open up the communication system worldwide, to open up the information sharing system worldwide so that people all over the world get the information, like what we learned in this conference this weekend here on water.
And the way the internet functions.
Oh, yes.
Basically.
Oh, yes.
But I want to understand something just historically, so it's clear, because you're so involved. I mean, you see the whole global satellite view. And just for those of us on Earth still, I just want to make it a little clarification. You started working on this in 1974 with von Braun. This was part of the original vision that he engaged you in.
This is it.
De-weaponize the plans for space.
Non-weaponized. Although, in a way, it is de-weaponized, because they have tried to test some weapon systems, but they haven't worked in space. But there are no operational weapons in space right now. There are two big lies that are being spread. One, there are already weapons in space, so go home, forget about it. You can't stop it. It's too late.
Oh, I see.
Second lie, propaganda A, good. Propaganda B is these are not going to be ready for deployment for years to come to become operational.
Don't bother yourself about it.
That's right. So just go ahead and protest the wars, protest whatever you want to, clean, talk about the environment.
Enjoy your popcorn.
Talk about the suffering children and go feed them. This is not going to happen until 2008, 2010, 12, 25. You hear all these things.
Yes, I see.
They are ready to deploy, and how they do that, the formula is they deploy space-based technology by calling it merely research or merely testing. So this bill and treaty both call for a complete immediate halt to all research, development, testing, manufacturing, production, and deployment of space-based weapons or weapons systems. The other thing that it does is it allows for this bill and treaty the continued research. So notice the Aikido here. We're not calling for shutting down the industry and shutting down the military and cutting back military bases. Go ahead and expand it all, we say to them, because they're going to anyway. It's just, it's too big for us to at least stop everything at this moment. You can't freeze anything. It keeps in motion. So we're allowing for the continuation of research, development, testing, manufacturing, production, and deployment of anything they want to do in space, as long as it's not of a space-based weapons nature. And we're also calling for, and this is kind of a little bit of a trick, we're calling for the halt to the research, development, testing, manufacturing, production, and deployment of anything that could damage or destroy an object in space that is in orbit. Now, if we called for stopping missile defense, because so many people come from a fear base, it wouldn't get stopped. But if we call for stopping technology that could deploy or that could damage or destroy an object in space that's in orbit, guess what we're stopping? You can't deploy a nuclear-tipped missile if it detonated in space and could damage or destroy, say, a satellite.
It's an end run.
It's an end run.
It's beautiful.
So I
think...
think...
This is the bill that Kucinich has agreed to champion on the Hill.
Yes, and he has gone to Canada to make a public leader, world statesman type statement to call on world leaders to sign this treaty immediately and send it to Kofi Annan. The UN Secretary General is always the treaty depositary. That office is the place where the treaties get deposited. So we can sign it outside of the UN Conference on Disarmament, which has been deadlocked for 6 or 7 years, which has a compromised Russian-Chinese treaty been introduced in there. And that is not going to stop deployment. It will cause for stopping deployment, but allows for research and development.
Yes, which is just another name for the same.
That's right. And they can deploy anything and not call it...
Euphemisms.
Oh, yeah. And they can call it research and development for years. They don't ever have to say it's operational. So they can say, we don't have operational weapons in space, So we have a chance now. This is not going to solve all the problems immediately, but it will put a lid on the war machine and allow it to transform itself. And what does that do? It's not just about technology. That shifts consciousness. Imagine when the world hears that the United States is not going to be able to, with its a group of allies, to dominate and control the world. And in fact, most of the countries, over 150 countries, have already said that they don't want weapons in space by signing other pieces of treaties that do not ban all space-based weapons like this one will. This is where everything pivots. This ban will impact all issues on the planet because everything will shift.
Now, did you write this legislation?
No, this was a compilation of many people putting their input into it. And Congressman Kucinich was willing to introduce it. Years ago, Senator Harkin, whom we hope will introduce the bill again in the Senate, and this is a revised version of it because everything's moved so fast. This is a much better version, and it's a bill with a companion world treaty. Now, in this Congress, we may not get anyone to sign it right away, but that's why we're going to the world level first, because the world leaders who are being sucked in one by one to working on the so-called missile defense system with temptations of extended missile and trade, a seat in NATO or some other economic organization, technology transfer.
Or a piece of the reconstruction of Iraq.
Oh, yes, or we'll reconstruct your country or clean up your environment, or we'll give you financial assistance. Yes, exactly. So a lot of these countries are being sucked into working on parts of it. We have a moment in history, a moment, literally a moment. And if anybody thinks that we have much more than a year, they're mistaken. They're in la-la land because it's not true. This momentum is moving so fast. And a lot of activists I've seen, having worked on the inside, where they get ignored really, except for piecemeal speeches now and then, to say, yes, of course, we're concerned about that. They jump in after it's too late to stop something because it's in a state of inertia. It's in a state of momentum that can't be stopped. This is something we have a chance of preventing. It's a preventative thing, and it's so brilliant because it includes everybody. It allows for everybody that's alive to keep functioning, but in the context of a whole new space-age paradigm. And what we're doing here, and this is really new and important, we're causing second order change.
Yes.
First order change doesn't change anything. It educates, it brings people in. This is going to cause real change to happen. We call second order change. I think it's the most exciting thing I've ever heard about.
Now, well, I could agree in so many ways. I mean, you know all of the details so much better than perhaps anyone. But going back to who wrote the legislation, are these essentially Congress people who wrote it, or they're drafters?
Well, it's just a whole lot of people. They're scientists, they're engineers, they're peace activists.
But it is a ratifiable peace.
Oh, absolutely.
Document
This
as
is
it
a real,
stands.
you can view the document on
Okay.
peaceinspace.com.
Okay.
www.peaceinspace, PEACEINSPACE.com. And people can contact me. Through that website.
Okay.
There's an FAQ, a frequently asked questions on that.
Okay.
And we have a chance now for everyone to just read that bill and treaty. That's all you have to do, and you'll say, like I did, this is it. This is the pivotal moment in history.
Okay.
We all know that we're on the verge of catastrophe in so many different areas.
Oh, yeah.
We all know that there are solutions out there to so many of the problems.
Yeah.
We all know that maybe we don't all know, there are 500 million orphans on this planet. How did we get into that situation, and how did we get so close to the chain of life where so many people are sick and suffering, and we're causing more of it, and people are so afraid that they're bombing buildings and people and blowing them up. We're into blowing people up. This does not have to happen anymore, and we can change it. So anyone that wants to get activated, thank Congressman Kucinich,
Yes.
call Harkin and say, please, let's get the bill.
That
I'm
question
also,
is,
I'm
are those the greatest actions that people, because we're just about out of time.
Yes.
I want you to let people know what it is they
call
can do.
every
First,
congressperson
go
on the
to
Hill.
website,
Yes.
get familiar with what the story really is.
That's
So
right.
you can be informed and intelligent about what it is you're saying.
Yes.
And then
And
call every
so that I
congressman
don't
on the
say
Hill.
it from my 501c3, I'm also president of the Space Preservation Trust Foundation. And I can say, call your Congress people, educate the candidates about this, and contact world leaders. If you want to work on the world level, get your children to write letters and say, please sign this treaty, the Space Preservation Treaty that is companion to the Space Preservation Bill. Look for, and if you want to help us organize the World Space Preservation Treaty Conference that we're putting together, where we want to invite the world leaders in to sign this treaty. And we will get a ban on space-based weapons. We will cause second order change in our lifetime. We will be able to heal the planet, the environment, the children, and have a wonderful future in peace for everybody.
Is the Bush administration, this seems silly, but it is opposing any such movement as this, right?
They're in favor of weaponizing space because that's the old
Well,
paradigm.
as I would imagine, right.
Yes. We're
So-
simply entering into an opportunity when we can enter into a new space age paradigm in which we live, where the solutions prevail, where peace prevails on Earth as it does in space, where we all live.
Sounds familiar. I like the sound of that.
I like that too. Peace
Carol,
on Earth
it's
as it
very
is in
beautiful.
space.
I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
your
much, Mitchell.
Absolutely, your incredible work on this.
Thank
And,
you.
You're playing a very vital role in helping us move to another
And thank
level
you
of
for
change.
doing a show that people can really get and duplicate and send around and
Absolutely.
do so many actions on so many issues that I know
Absolutely.
you cover. Thank
We
you.
will promote such activism.
Thank you.
Thanks again. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. And look up these websites. They'll be aired again at the end of the show. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.